Alright, so you've been wanting to get into fighting games for a while. You are armed with PS4, gamepad, and Dream, and you just picked up Mortal Kombat, and you want to figure out how to play it. I've been there, and I'm basically still there. You can see I'm only level 2 right now, and it doesn't really matter specifically the game. I'm just using Mortal Kombat as the example here, because I just picked this up the other day, it was on sale, and I wanted to figure out how to play it. But let's say that's where you are. Maybe you are if you're watching this video. Where do you start? It's a really, strangely anxiety-inducing, first experience, and, especially if it's your first time getting into a fighting game. And, I totally get it. I've definitely been there myself with several games now. What's the step-by-step? What's the blow-by-blow to get into a fighting game? Or, just get into Mortal Kombat 11, or another fighting game, it doesn't really matter. Like, what's the process? So, my sort of checklist that I go through when I'm learning a new fighting game is, very first thing, of course, big duh, do the tutorial. And the tutorial depends on, like, the kind of game you're playing. It might be more or less complicated, or it might be non-existent, and like with Tekken. So, in the case of Mortal Kombat, you have a really good amount of tutorial here. There's a lot to go by, and the basic tutorial goes over a lot of stuff, that's great for just getting started in the game. And the advanced tutorials have a lot going on. Like, some of this stuff was even, getting confusing for me. And then you have all this stuff down here in strategy where you have, even more happening. And some of this, it's having you pull off combos that are a little bit hard to execute, trying to figure all that out. It's, it can be a little tough, and, even if it's just a tutorial. And in the case of a game that has a lot of tutorial, like Mortal Kombat, sometimes it's just best to do the tutorial up to the point where your brain kind of starts to hurt, and then give it a break. Because it's not best to just kind of keep grinding away at something that's not making any sense. And so, sometimes you just got to give yourself a little bit of a break and step away and come back to it later. And not even necessarily step away. You can always just hop into like some online matches, figure out what you're getting hit by, what some issues are, what you don't understand, and then come back into the tutorial with that kind of mindset. So, there's a few different ways around going through the tutorial. I was able to make it all the way through the tutorial, and it took me around 3 hours. And honestly, that was, partly because I was a little bit stubborn and going against my own advice there. And because I had some options set up for Mortal Kombat with the controls. This is my new setup now, but I had alternate control on, which was a big thing. Which kind of since I'm playing on stick instead of pad, it adds the diagonal motion. So a lot of Mortal Kombat's moves are just like, do back forward. But if you have the alternate control on, it makes it a whole half circle forward. So I had that on, and I was having some trouble struggling with some of the combos around this part. But, you don't have to have that on. A lot of the thing is, don't be stubborn like I was. Just do whatever the game gives you and make it easy on yourself, especially early on. Because if you get frustrated early on, it's going to affect a good majority of your early experience. It's going to feel like a slog learning stuff. But once you've made it through the tutorials, and in Mortal Kombat 11, there's some character lessons, which could give you a pretty good idea on what kind of character you want to get attached to and kind of move forward with. I did this with actually not very many characters. Most of the work I did was in training mode. I just kind of hopped in, and it ended up being almost exactly the same kind of thing. Because a lot of this is just, it brings you through some of the special moves that they have, and the non-variation special moves, and kind of gives you a general idea of how the characters kind of work. And some other games will have this kind of a system. It's less of like a demonstration of their special moves, though, and it might be called like mission mode. And sometimes in games, it's just to kind of demonstrate some of the combos that some characters can do. And that's not always necessary to go through all of them. Some of them can get really difficult, especially in Uniclear. Some of the advanced mission modes on some of the characters there take a while to grind out, even if you're familiar with fighting games. So that kind of stuff isn't always necessary to play all of that out. But a lot of these, character tutorials are just to give you a general idea of how the characters play out. And just to show off a little bit of it, I'm not going to go through the whole you know, basic through advanced tutorial, just because that would probably take a while. And you know, and that's easy enough to do. But just to show off, you know, kind of what some of these character tutorials do, it's like, you know, you have your projectiles, you can amplify your projectiles, throw another one, and kind of it gives you a general idea of how the character is going to feel, which is great early on, because some of the stuff you can't really tell just by looking at the character's design. And sometimes you don't want to decide on a character because of their design. You know, I'm pretty shallow, and so I will, you know, pick characters based off of their design, and usually just generally how they look and feel. And you know, sometimes I take a look at, you know, their moves and stuff like this. Like I'm playing Kano. I think I'm gonna go a little bit longer term with Kano. Gonna be doing some, you know, online matches and stuff like that. Just because I like some of his moves. I think they just look fun. He's you know, got an attitude and everything like that. He just feels a bit goofy. So, you know, that's where I'm at. But there are plenty of reasons to pick a character. But even if a game doesn't have these kind of like character tutorials where it walks you through all their specials, you can easily do this stuff just going in and setting up in training mode. I can even show that off now. You can set up almost the exact same thing, just going into practice and just like picking a character, you know, let's say RoboCop, and, you know, just go through and step through all of their specials and kind of, you know, look for, you know, their effects and their feel and stuff like that. And, you know, you don't necessarily even have to make, like, you know, a decision right up front, like, this is who I'm going to dedicate my life to. Like, sometimes you just bounce around a little bit and, you know, play the game a little bit before you even make that kind of a decision. But, you know, stuff like this can at least give you a general idea of how a character looks and feels, and I think that's a really important thing for picking someone you're going to stick with. And at least for, you know, the concept of picking a character and sticking with them. I think it's a good idea, especially early on, to, you know, pick a character to kind of stick with a little bit at some point. You know, after you've done a little bit of experimentation, it's definitely not a bad idea. Because if everything's changing a lot and, you know, you're playing you're just sitting on random, you're playing a new character every time, nothing's really going to sink in. You're not really going to get much of an idea of, you know, the kind of fundamentals of the game, which is kind of more of a, you know, even more complicated subject that I could probably make a whole video on its own, is, you know, learning the fundamentals of a game. But, you know, it's a good idea to just have at least some element of consistency when you're learning a fighting game. So once you've gone through the tutorial and you've learned a little bit about, you know, just the game's systems and the concepts behind it, and, you know, maybe picked a character, my best advice is to just, you know, hop online and just start playing, especially if that's, you know, the end goal of what you want to do. Like, maybe you just want to, you know, play some of the, you know, single player, like play some arcade mode. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that can be fun in its own right. I know Mortal Kombat has its own, you know, pretty decently long story, that I've heard is decently fun. And, you know, same thing with like Soul Cal 6. I think Tekken also has a pretty good story mode. So, you know, if you just want to play it for the single player, that's also all right. But if you're looking as an end goal to be playing this online against people competitively, and, you know, there's no like barrier to entry. You can just hop online. You know, you don't need anyone's permission to just play the game online. So I think that's like one of the anxieties around playing a game early on, is feeling like you need to be at a certain level of execution to just play online. Like, you know, I could even just hop into a match now, you know, just go straight into matchmaking. I've only played like, you know, 3 matches online, and, you know, I barely know what I'm doing, but, you know, you can just do it. There's nothing really to be stressed out about. I know, you know, it's easy to say you just shouldn't be stressed out about it, but, you know, I think it's definitely a mindset thing that you just kind of have to approach and deal with, and kind of like immersion therapy kind of deal. You know, just make yourself go online a few times, and eventually that anxiety is gonna go away. You know, that's just kind of how it is, because it really isn't a big deal, especially in a game with good matchmaking like this. And, you know, it makes it a whole lot easier. And, you know, that's why I kind of prefer, you know, newer games. And, because there's usually a better matchmaking system and they're usually better populated. And especially MK11 because it has rollback netcode, which makes it so that the pool for, you know, the pool for players is a lot larger, and you'll have a better chance at getting like a good matchup with like a player who has a similar level of knowledge as you. So that's a big thing, is, you know, having at least some fair matches early on. And, you know, sometimes you just get destroyed like that, and that's fine, you know? You don't have to take a loss personally. It's not a huge deal. I think one of the biggest things, especially when you're hopping online like this, is to keep in mind what you're kind of getting hit by, and then take it into training mode afterwards, which I'll do after this match is over.
Mercy. Finish him. The Terminator wins.
You know, at the end of the day, sometimes it's just that losing is part of the learning process. In fact, that's always it. You know, you kind of have to take your lessons from each match and take that knowledge and move on. So, you know, that's just kind of how it is. And it's a tough mindset to think about taking on when you're early on and, you know, stressed out about online play and stuff. But, you know, it's you develop that mindset as you start playing. And so a lot of it is just kind of working past that fear and that anxiety, and then, you know, figuring out how to apply knowledge and figure out what lessons you can from losing. And that's just how it'll be. So, you know, for example, you know, from that match, I can take it into training mode, do Kano versus you know, Terminator. I forget what you know, variation stuff he might have had, but you can take it straight into training mode and then just have, you know, whatever character you're having trouble with, and, you know, do the things against you that they were doing. So I can figure out what combo he was using, and so now I have him set up doing, you know, what I was getting hit by constantly. So I can just sit here and, you know, practice the timing on the blocking. And, you know, figure out what to do if I get hit by it, you know, what the best thing out is. You know, maybe I can figure out, you know, oh, I need to, you know, do a get-up roll out of this, or something like that. And just get out of the pressure a little bit. And, you know, that's my general process, and what I think the best way to use training mode is. You know, you don't need to sit in here forever and figure out the perfect counter to every situation, because, you know, you're never going to get to that point. It's going to be an intuitive process of learning slowly and accumulating knowledge and figuring out how to apply that knowledge. And that's all fighting games really are about. So hopefully that helps out a bit. I know learning a fighting game for the first time can be really stressful, especially if you've never played them before. And another thing is, you know, it doesn't matter what platform you play on, and, you know, usually it's better to have, you know, some kind of like wired connection or something like that. But, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're a console player or a PC player or what control scheme you're using. You know, the mindset is going to be the same no matter what. And it's something you can take with you to different games too. You know, it's all about, you know, taking lessons from failures and applying them and eventually turning them into successes. And that's to me what makes fighting games fun. So if you're feeling anxious about picking up a fighting game, my advice is just get in there, start playing, and hopefully apply some of that knowledge. So anyways, see you next time. I'm hoping to do some online matches in a video soon for Mortal Kombat. You know, see if I can pick up some knowledge about Kano and figure out what to do against certain characters. And hopefully we'll see that soon. So I will see you next time.